100 days and counting until the midterm elections. A sterling opportunity for our CBS News Battleground Tracker and our first estimate of where the battleground control for the House of Representatives stands. Republicans, who currently hold 214 of 435 seats and are in the minority, would take over control in the House by anywhere from a narrow majority to a sizable one if the election were held today. Our best estimate at the moment is 230 seats. Joining us now to explain all of this is CBS News Elections and Surveys Director Anthony Salvanto. Anthony, okay, that number 230 sticks in our mind, but what is the largest reason that it looks like it might be 230?
Morning, John. So let's start by reminding people that there are 435 separate contests going on this fall. And we interviewed people across all those districts and put it into this model to show you that in terms of seats, which is what matters. Now, the first thing you notice is that most seats don't flip. That's typical. But there is a narrow band in which we're going to trade in this range. And that's what's really important to watch. Now, these seats that could swing back and forth, they're sort of these prevailing political winds, if you will. And this election seems like it's really influenced by what we might call the nature of the times, which is that a lot of people think that the country is moving in the wrong direction, that things aren't good. And that's not only the most important thing voters are telling us that's on their minds, but it's also that Republicans are winning those voters. And so that's really impacting those seats.
And so the nature of the times is often associated with the president. The president is often, Joe Biden wouldn't like this, but it's often seen as a referendum on the presidency. So what does the survey tell us about Joe Biden and the role he's playing in the election?
Yeah, a president's always on the ballot in a midterm, and even if he's not really on the ballot, he's on voters' minds. That's certainly the case here. He's a big motivator for Republicans, and that's pretty typical because a president's party typically loses seats in a midterm. For them, it's another bite at the apple. They get to vote again, if you will, after 2020. Now, the important thing, though, that leads to is Biden suffered some lower approval even among Democrats. And that's dampening enthusiasm among Democrats. And that's going to lead to another problem for the party right now, which is perhaps lower turnout from his base.
So Republicans are angrier about the way things are happening now. They're turning out and they don't like the president. So the Democrats, remind me again what they feel about Joe Biden and what do they feel about Donald Trump, who used to motivate them quite strongly?
Yeah, so there are a couple of things. One is if they're disappointed with Joe Biden, they may sit this out, is what they're telling us. You look at key parts of the Democratic constituency. For one, just one example, young people, far less enthusiastic about voting than older Americans. That makes the electorate favor the Republicans right there if that Democratic base doesn't show up. Then let's mention the former President Trump. It's interesting, he is just as much of a motivating factor as Joe Biden. He's still on Democrats' minds, even though he's out of office. So for Republicans, they see him as a positive. They actually think that former President Trump is fighting for their issues more than their party in Congress. Clearly still seen as a leader of the party in that regard. But then for Democrats, he's a net negative. So that's something I think to watch. Do Democrats keep talking about him as we go forward? Because he does motivate Democrats.
Right, so Donald Trump is motivating both parties.
Yeah.
Have the January 6th hearings played a role, or do they, in your survey data?
Well, in some sense, Democrats are watching it more, so they're kind of preaching to the converted. What you do see is as Republicans have tuned out these hearings, there's a bit of a split. There's the Republicans who consider themselves MAGA Republicans. That's just over half the party, right? They're very close to the former president. They not only tuned it out, but some of them actually wish the president had succeeded in doing what they think he was trying to do and stay in office. But there's a slight number of Republicans who are watching this, and you see a little bit more hesitancy among them about their vote choice. So marginal differences matter, and I think that's going to be one of the keys going forward if some Republicans peel off as a result of this.
Another focus in the political world, other than the January 6 hearings recently, has been the decision on Roe versus Wade. A lot of Democrats, pundits, thought this would energize the Democratic base. What does the survey say?
Well, let's look at women under 50, because that's a key part of the Democratic base. They consider abortion to be just as important as other big issues, like the economy, like inflation. They also believe that a Republican Congress would make things overall worse for women. And they describe the Republican Party as extreme. But there's a cross pressure here, which is that they don't see the Democrats as effective, and they don't think that the Democrats are doing enough right now to protect abortion rights. So they're not necessarily seeing the answer from the Democrats, and that at the moment has the Democrats not doing as well with that group as they have in past elections.
So does that mean they have an opinion about Republicans, but it doesn't mean they're going to be motivated to necessarily vote on it?
Right, because they have to get an answer from the Democrats, and they're not seeing that right now.
Inside that question of women, college-educated women, that was a group the Democrats did well with. How is the Democratic Party doing now?
Worse than they have in previous elections, and that is so important. Those numbers are down. They think that the Republican Congress would make things worse for women in the country, but concerned about the economy, very concerned about the direction of the country, and all of those things are factoring in too. This is going to be one of the keys, if not the key groups to watch through the fall.
The final, quickly, Anthony, is the Democrats think they have a spending bill that's about to pass through the Senate. Will that help their fortunes in the next 100 days?
People will reason from results. They'll reason from what they see at the cash register and the gas pump, not necessarily from legislation, right? And we see that. When people say they're personally affected, they're less enthusiastic about voting for Democrats. So they've got, 6 to 8 weeks to see if they can turn that idea around in people's minds.
All right, Anthony Salvanto, thanks so much as always, and we'll be right back.